about water and urban places. This is Ideanthro. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. I'm really pleased today to have two guests with me who have come along to talk about some recent research on a recent project that's really close to my heart. So you will have heard me talk a bunch before on Ideanthro about how do we get this water-sensitive urban design concept and make it more cost-effective than it currently is. It's not on a site-by-site basis on the moment, it's not cost ineffective, but when we scale it up to a whole city, there's some challenges at the moment. So I'm super pleased to have our two guests, Simon Brink from Manningham City Council and Harsha Fowler from Monash University, to join us today and talk about Manningham City Council's Zero Additional Maintenance, ZAM, their ZAM WSUD project. So, Simon, Harsha, welcome along. Thank you for taking the time to have a chat.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jack.
Cool, no worries. So, just as a little bit of background, if people want to kind of go and get a little bit of context in this, this is not the first time we've spoken about ZAM WSUD on Ideanthro. We spoke about it back on episodes 43, 44, and 159, although that was 159 was in the context of some New Zealand sites that I think fit within the ZAM WSUD, idea and philosophy. Anyway, Simon, do you want to give us an intro to ZAM WSUD as a whole and why it's important and how it fits into this idea of making water-sensitive urban design cost-effective?
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, Jack. I think that the ZAM WSUD idea was really came out of this observation, which I think, Jack, obviously you've come to the same sort of conclusions. It's when you upscale these things and you sort of look at the maintenance costs and you say, okay, for Manningham City Council, for example, we might end up needing 10 to 15,000 rain gardens to cover the whole municipality. And then you say, okay, well, what's the maintenance cost? And then you work out what that's going to be. And it actually, the figure comes to being something which is quite a significant percentage of the annual revenue coming into councils. And it's sort of like, well, the community is not necessarily going to support us spending, 3% of our rate just on maintenance of these systems. That's ignoring the capital stuff. And I guess the thing is also, well, rather than having to spend that money, there's simple ways of getting the engineering better, the designs better, to do it so we don't have to spend that money. It just makes a hell of a lot of sense to explore that potential. And so the ZAM WSUD project really came out of a directive from us, which was from the director level, which is about saying, well, okay, we're happy with water-sensitive urban design, but from now on, we want to only install stuff that's not going to have significant maintenance requirements. And so we teamed up with Monash Uni and started to look at a few different options around that. And I guess the grass species was one part of the jigsaw puzzle. And the idea that grass, particularly nature strip, gets mowed by residents anyway. So if you're using grass as your vegetation species, then the residents mow the grass, and so you can potentially remove the need to maintain the vegetation. And there's a few other initiatives with the ZAM WSUD project also around litter, for keeping litter out of the systems and sort of pre-sediment collection as well too. But I guess where we are at the moment with ZAM WSUD is we've got about 20 different trial installations in. They've been in for around probably about 3 years. And so we're just sort of monitoring these and seeing how they're going. And yeah, they seem to be performing pretty well with pretty much limited maintenance. And we've had a few learnings along the way, but I guess we're confident we've got a solution that really has got rid of the maintenance requirements. And then I guess the next sort of steps are around making the system sort of fit with the streetscape and sort of practical, and how does it fit in with retrofit sites and then different designs for new installations. But yeah, pretty confident that there is a sort of game-changing potential there around zero maintenance water sensitive urban design.
Cool, I love it. Which of course then leads us to what exactly we're talking about today, because we've got some new news, I suppose, to share with people, which comes back to this topic of grass. Because one of the question marks throughout this has been, does grass perform good treatment for nutrient removal in bioretention systems? Because if you went back, I remember when I joined the industry, 8 odd years ago now, people definitely said to me at that time, "Oh no, you shouldn't put grass in a bioretention system. It doesn't do good treatment, and it doesn't keep the hydraulic conductivity where we want it." So there was always kind of this pushback. No, probably shouldn't do that. And then a few years ago, I remember seeing like one little study come out of Monash Uni that had tested like one grass species, and lo and behold, it showed some promising performance. But it was one species, one study, But the two of you, and no doubt colleagues, have been studying a variety of species in lab scale biofilters at Monash, and have got good results from what nitrogen removal, definitely. Phosphorus, yes, but there was an interesting little question mark there. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the hydraulic conductivity is pretty good. So, Harsha, do you want to kind of give us a bit of an overview of, I suppose, what this research has found, and then if we need to dig into any specifics of how it was done, but give people a taste. What have you found, and is it true that turf is doing a good job of treatment in bioretention?
Sure. So I would like to start by first acknowledging Anaderesis and Benita Haas, who were part of developing this research project. So the aim behind that was to determine whether a range of lawn grasses can be used for nutrient removal. So we tested 6 different species. There was palmetto softleaf buffalo, which have previously been tested, as you just mentioned, Jack. And we tested Kenda Kaikuyu, there's village green Kaikuyu, Empire Zosia, Nara native, and Santa Ana as well. And what we found is that all of them, at final after a year of testing, all of them were comparatively effective at nutrient removal.
Good. And yeah, so comparatively effective and good removal as well.
Yes, like excellent removal. And they achieved 80% removal in our column study. So
that's for total nitrogen.
That's for total nitrogen, 80% in our column. And obviously, first, what that means for practice is that there's definitely scientific evidence there that a range of lawn grasses can be used to achieve nutrient removal within the standard water quality standards for stormwater management. But also, we should, although we've achieved 80%, obviously in practice, there would be some differences there. I guess the idea of this trial was to differentiate between the performance of the different species and see if they are effective. So what does that mean for practice is that, yes, they are effective and can be successfully used. And one of the points is that we found that these, like all lawn grasses, can be implemented, can be selected for use in bioretention systems, and the performance will depend on their health, the health of the species. So obviously, if, for example, a particular species prefers sunlight conditions, then if it's implemented at a site that is favorable for it, then we can be sure that it will achieve water quality from water targets.
The results really give designers and engineers a great opportunity to use a range of different species for water-sensitive urban design installation with grasses. And I guess some of the sort of thinking around that too is there's actually a whole lot of different compatibilities between different grass types and different soil types. For instance, the soft-leaf buffalo that was used in some of the early trials didn't quite perform so well. And when we talked to the horticultural guys, they said, okay, well, no, there's actually an incompatibility between the buffalo species and sand. The buffalo species work really well on clay soils, but some of the other species are a lot better suited to sand. And so in some ways, the real importance of the trial was also to say, well, if the buffaloes aren't going to work so well in sand, what are other species that are available? But then there's also the potential around, as Harsh was saying, around sunlight, but also around trafficability. Such as the kikuyu is really good for high traffic areas, but some of the say that the zoysias are not so good for high traffic areas, but maybe good for areas with less sunlight. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of options around selection of grass species. And I mean, in this study, we trialled 6 different species, but the fact that all 6 of them, after a 12-month period, were performing at 80% total nitrogen removal, also indicates potentially that other grass species may also achieve the same result. Obviously, we can't guarantee that because they haven't been tested, but it does give a strong indication that the grass species in general are likely to be suitable for water-sensitive urban design installations.
Yeah, and it would seem that along those lines, that if for some reason someone needed to pick a species that wasn't on that, that list of 6 tested, that they could approach it from a few of the angles that you've mentioned. So, okay, is it a location that's likely to thrive, so it's healthy? Does it have some of the same functional attributes? So you could presumably look at, for example, some of these species, see if there are any commonalities in maybe root growth type or nature of their growth, and then maybe compare the species you're looking at. Like, there would be some things you could probably do to give yourself a little more confidence if you had to use a species that hadn't been tested before. In the same way that with standard bioretention plants, we sometimes talk about or pick if it's a plant that hasn't been tested, let's think about its attributes in terms of root growth and the like. So yeah.
Agree.
One thing that I'd like to dig into here, and Harsha, you went towards touching on this, but didn't exactly go in there. So with the phosphorus removal results, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they found that by the end of the study, when the species were well established and it was also closer to the summer months, so in the growing period, the phosphorus removal was quite good. But the report mentions that earlier, like in the winter testing, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was the phosphorus removal was a little bit down, and in some species a little bit of leaching at that point in time. Can you talk to that point and what that might have taught us as well?
Yes, Jack. So the fact is that based on our previous experience and research, we found that nitrogen removal in bioretention systems is a lot more reliant on the type of plant species that are used in these systems, more so than for phosphorus removal, which is more driven by physical processes within the system, mainly because phosphorus is mostly associated with sediments in stormwater. So, and sediments are removed by physical processes like sedimentation processes, and so is phosphorus, which are associated with these species. So it's kind of phosphorus removal does not depend on the plant species, so on the type of lawn grasses, but it's more like at the beginning we saw some like phosphorus removal was not that effective. We think that it's because of bleaching, and it could be from the clean fruit media, but it could also be from the initial rough media of the lawn grasses, and might be attributed because of full establishment. but that was universal for all columns. So it's actually not, so phosphorus removal is not a function, not so much a function of loan grasses.
When you say initial growth media harsher, were the grasses washed completely before they were put into the tube, or was there a bit of that soil sort of, still around the plant, the grass when it was planted?
Yes, there was a bit of soil behind the grass, just underneath the grasses, and we decided not to wash it because then this might disturb the roots and it might be harder for establishing the plant, especially because this experiment started in autumn last year. So going into winter, which is not the ideal conditions for planting at that time. So we didn't want to disturb the lawn grasses as much. So
yeah. There may be quite a high phosphorus content in that media that's around the grass.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a look at the report, also most of the species of phosphorus in the outflow of the columns were in organic form. So yes, so kind of it's less bioavailable than the.
Yeah. So I suppose the takeaway from that is that, once they got settled in, the phosphorus removal's fine, but there was something which, maybe it's to do with the soil on the roots initially, maybe it's to do with a little bit of, the plants not initially being thriving because it was autumn and they just got planted and, it took some time to get going. Something went a little slow with phosphorus initially. We can't be sure what, but it got to start by the end of that, the year's testing, give or take, it was up and running and doing a good job.
Yeah, I think with this system, you've almost got to sort of say, okay, for the first few months, not so worried about, phosphorus and even nitrogen, because the thing is, for those plants to establish, you actually want higher levels of nitrogen and phosphorus in the system. So I know when we did the field installations, some of the initial installations, we didn't put any fertilizer in, the grasses were washed quite well, and they had quite poor survival rates, probably because there wasn't enough nutrients around. So, but I think some of the later ones we did, we actually added some fertilizer in, and you're sort of saying, well, you're probably going to get a bit of leaching of nitrogen and phosphorus, for the first couple of months. Then you say, okay, well, these systems are going to last for, 50 years or whatever. You sort of, you're taking a bit of a hit on that stuff in the early stages because you need that to get the grass fully established and really going well. And then you move quite quickly into a low discharge sort of scenario. I'm not sure in this trial the phosphorus was obviously a bit higher early on, but then by 6 months was it down, or when was it down harsher in terms of by 26 weeks? Still,
so halfway through the year. Yep.
Yeah.
Which let's be honest, that's not really any different to tests that. And obviously, there's always variability, but that pattern of things taking a little while to get established before they get going is the same pattern that you see with Carrix and Juncus and everything else that gets tested. I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, but it's a very common pattern. It's not like this is a turf species specific issue. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think this trial was also really good that it extended it out to a full year, basically. Because we sort of, initially it was sort of going to be more of a 6-month trial, but then we extended it right out to almost a year. But then we also did a wet conditioning trial at maturity and then a dry conditioning trial at maturity. So because the early test results, we did a dry test sort of, I think it was the 26-week one, which was the performance wasn't quite so good. But once we let it go to almost a full year, then it was performing well under both wet and dry conditions. So obviously there is that sort of year of time that's needed for the system to get going to be able to perform effectively.
Yeah, cool. I really like it. So kind of bringing this conversation round to a close. We've got these results now. It's, giving confidence for the turf side of things. I suppose what I'd like to ask is, what's next, both from a practical WSUD implementation point of view and from a research point of view? Are there things on the horizon in that space that we should be keeping an ear out for, even if it's 6 or 12 months or 18 months down the track? What's next?
Yeah, okay. Well, so just, I guess, from the ZAM was a project which was sort of came out of Manningham City Council. Look, I guess we with local government, sometimes these things sort of go in waves, and I guess there was some enthusiasm a few years back and launched the project. But I guess at the moment there has been a bit of a reduced interest in the project from the sort of local government level. I guess in Victoria we've had this thing called rate capping, where councils are sort of their spending is being controlled by state government. So it has become the area a little bit where local governments are sort of not being too keen to really get into, because they see it as an extra expenditure and without an ability to create revenue for it. So look, I think in terms of the ZAM was a project, it's probably going to go on hold for a little bit at the moment until there's perhaps some changes around Victorian state's water policy. I guess what we're trying to do is try and get the handbook completed and updated, so that'll be a resource that's available through the Clear Water website for anyone to use around Australia and internationally. And I think the ZAM was stuff for us. There's also some potential there to look around some of the flooding issues. I think the ZAM was design to date have been really focused around water quality, but less focused around water quantity. So there's been some really good work happening over in South Australia around tree-based water-sensitive urban design, and it looks like there's going to be some potential there to have tree-based water-sensitive urban design with, again, the zero additional maintenance objective being met. But those systems look like they have a bit better potential in terms of soaking up water through the tree network to also reduce sort of minor flooding risk. So that's probably where Manningham is looking at going, and we've done a whole lot of installations around these tree net systems. And I guess there's also the other issue was also around trip hazards. Now, when you're retrofitting an urban streetscape and you drop down your nature strip, you've got the issue of the curve and the potential for a trip hazard when you're going from the grass area, then you've got a curve and then onto the road. So there's just a few little subtle things around that. I mean, I think the ZAM Woods stuff really is set up really nicely for new areas. Like if you're doing a complete redesign of an urban area, you can then put your nature strip down at a lower level, similar to the road, and you can have your water going onto these things, set it all up from day one without having any of these issues at very, very minimal cost. And you can really, really very easily design a fully water-sensitive urban subdivision. But I think, our initial thing, because Manningham is mostly already established urban, was really to try and come up with something for a retrofit something. But yeah. I think maybe that the net things are going to be slightly more cost-effective for our scenarios. So yeah, hopefully others will take the ball and run with it in terms of larger grass installations in new growth areas.
Yeah, and look, this is the beauty of this, and this is the beauty of us having a chat and sharing stuff, is that, like, by helping people become aware of this, the person, whoever they are, whether it's, in Victoria, in Australia, somewhere else around the world, can get that taste of it from what you're doing. And, at the risk of putting words in your mouth, I have no doubt that if someone was going, I'm interested in this stuff, and wanted to know more about it and then piggyback on it and try it somewhere, I have no doubt that you'd be happy to talk with them, because it's exactly that. It doesn't just have to be Manningham and Monash playing in this space. People can try it everywhere. One of my favourite spots actually is there's a development you're mentioning new development. There's a development near Caloundra on the Sunshine Coast where the landscape architect specified turf in systems about 3 years ago or so. So there's a setup that's along the ZAM WSUD lines. It's not entirely ZAM, but along those lines in southeast Queensland as well. So, what about
fantastic?
Yeah, what about research-wise, Harsha? Are there any things that, even if there's no, I suppose maybe direct plans to start the research, are there any particular topics that you'd be interested to see more research based on the back of this? Is there something that you're like, oh, I'd love to test that and try that, or?
Yes, so this research, I guess one of the outcomes is that it opens doors for the use of turf in green infrastructure technologies, as we say. And I was recently in Indonesia, and there I came across a green roof which was planted with grass, which I think is quite innovative. I don't know how this can be translated here in Australia, given that climatic conditions are different, like in Indonesia, it's more, they experience more intense rainfall and more humid. So, but this definitely opened doors for use of turf in green infrastructure. And I guess going along the lines of what Simon said about now designing WSUD systems more for their water quantity benefits. So it'll be good in that respect. It'll be good to see the evapotranspiration potential of these species, like how much water and stormwater can be, or flow can be retained by these species.
I would love to see research on that as well, because there's a few little bits of research out and about that show bioretention systems capturing, and I'll use the words disappearing, larger volumes of water than I feel we'd previously thought. So I'd love to see research that looked at evapotranspiration out of biopods. I think it would be fascinating. So, okay, let's bring. Oh, say Simon? No?
Yeah, I think that definitely the biofiltration system with the water removal, but also the linking in with trees. And I think the guys in South Australia have done a really good job at that. Yes, there's a lot more water going into these systems disappearing, but then if you can add a tree into it as well, the amount of water disappearing just goes up by 2 or 3 times. So there's definitely some good potential to move more into the tree space.
And also there's now research that trees are able to contribute in using the urban island heat effect to their cooling properties. So,
yeah, I love it. Okay, let's bring this to a close. I've really enjoyed this chat, so thank you both for taking the time. So if people want to, the one thing we didn't actually mention was the name of the report. And so if people want to find out more about this research, what is this report called and where should they go to find it?
Okay, it's the performance of the turf grass species in WSUD stormwater biofilters. Final report, April 2018, by Manningham City Council and Monash University, prepared by Harsha Fowler, Anna Delatic, Emily Payne and Simon Brink. The report is going to be available through the Clearwater website. Mm-hmm. So if you get onto a web search and type Clearwater WSUD, that's ZAM-WSUD, that link should come up pretty quickly and you can access the report and then other materials also on WSUD, such as the WSUD handbook.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Thank you again for your time. And I hope to chat in the future more about this with you both. Have a good one. I will see you soon.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jack.
No dramas.
Before you go, our best episodes come from your questions. This knowledge base, these discussions that are Ideanthro improve with your contribution. So if there's a topic, an idea, a concept that you would like us to explore, come and ask us. You know where to find us. www.ideanthro.com/contact. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and that place you get your good podcasts from. You know where to find us. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you soon.